All right, everyone. Let me do a few things here. We'll get going. Sorry for the lack of a notification earlier today. Life's been crazy. Hope you guys are doing well. I don't even know if anything's happened today. Has anything happened in the great world of college football today? I've been completely out of the loop. But we've got a good show coming up. We've got a lot of good contributors coming on, a lot of good guests. Claire Crawford, Steve Dace, Michigan Podcast, Mike Laval, Last Word on College Football, Jeff Sharon, UCF Podcast. So a lot of good guests. And I'm going to send out the link to everyone. And, of course, we're going to have the call-in as well. 860-325-3687. And we will get started here in just a second. Hopefully. Running late tonight, just getting home from work. So we'll get after it here. Who's calling me? Stephen Smith's calling me. I'm kind of on the air, Stephen. I can't even see the live chat right now. Okay, I think we're caught up. Where am I? There I am. Man, this is all screwed up. All right. Give me 1 second. All right, everyone. Welcome to MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We are just jumping on the live stream as well, and I'm glad to see a number of you on the line already. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're joining us for the first time, check out the videos first, and then let us know what you think. We take suggestions. We take requests as well. And the audio has expanded out to Spotify. So if you enjoy the audio instead, go to Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, or Stitcher. We've got our previews and predictions for a couple Big Ten games, Michigan State over on SG1 Sports, and also Ohio State, Purdue. We will have live streams on SG1 Sports coming up Friday at noon Eastern time, and also Sunday with a big Saturday college football wrap-up Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So again, we're going to be doing some work as we have for the past few weeks over on SG1 Sports. At some point, I will give a channel update here, and we'll have a back and forth here during a live stream so I can share the vision and the approach coming up. Got Jeff Sharon on the line to talk some Central Florida football. The Knights, of course, undefeated. Much controversy surrounding that program over the past year and a half in regards to where should they be ranked? How good are they? Jeff, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Mark. Good to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on this show.
Absolutely. So Central Florida, I don't even know who they're playing this week.
East
That's
Carolina.
how well prepared I am. I'm sorry. Who are they playing?
East Carolina. They're at ECU this week.
Okay, so they should have a fairly light touch this week.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes, we thought that about 5 years ago at that Temple game when UCF came in with one loss and Temple came in with 2 wins, and UCF was one-handed catch by J.J. Wharton away from losing that game. Remember that? So
I remember that.
You can ask my buddies at Black and Gold Banner at Brian Murphy and Eric Lopez. I'd never sleep on any opponent that UCF plays.
Well, let's get everybody squared away before we dive into the football team on where they can catch you for all this UCF coverage.
Sure. I am the managing editor of Black and Gold Banneret. That's banner with an ET at the end. It's the newly minted UCF team site on the SB Nation network. You can follow us at UCF_Banneret. That's UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And you can follow me individually at Jeff_Sharon.
So yeah, Jeff Sharon joined us a few weeks ago to talk. Actually, it's been all the way back preseason now. It's been so long ago, I've lost track of time.
Yeah, it was the night that I think Urban Meyer got his suspension handed down. Is that right?
Unfortunately, didn't give enough time to talk UCF, but the floor is yours. And your thoughts about the first half of the season in relationship to what you expected at this point.
I would say better than expected, Mark. I think that the way UCF has come out of the gates, obviously they had the one game against North Carolina wiped out because of the hurricane. That would have been a really nice road test for them if they had the opportunity to play that game. Second straight year, actually, that UCF has had games wiped out due to hurricanes. And actually second straight year that they had a game against an ACC opponent wiped out because of a hurricane. Remember they were scheduled to play Georgia Tech last year at home. That game got wiped out because of a hurricane hitting the state of Florida. But aside from that, I came into the season, my expectations were that UCF would be pretty good, but might stumble a little bit out of the gate. They lost 6 key starters on defense, and the guys that they lost weren't just cannon fodder. I mean, you're talking Shaquem Griffin, you're talking Trey Neal, who actually transferred to Nebraska as a graduate student, followed Scott Frost. You're talking guys like Tony Gerard, Jamias Pittman, who just got called up to the Miami Dolphins. Mike Hughes, who was so outstanding, had that amazing kick return against USF that they'll be playing on repeat in the UCF annals from here until we're all dead and gone. But this team has rallied behind this new coaching staff led by Josh Heupel, and I think, hard as this may seem to believe, but hiring Randy Shannon as the defensive coordinator to work alongside Coach Heupel has actually turned out to be a very underrated hire. UCF is among one of the nation's leaders right now in scoring defense, and that's despite the fact that they're actually not very good in terms of total defense. I think they're in the high double figures in the FBS rankings in that statistic. But classic bend but don't break, especially when you're dealing with Josh Heupel's offense. Mackenzie Milton has been not just as advertised. I think he's actually been better this year. He's that much more accurate with the football. And even losing guys on offense like Traquan Smith and Jordan Akins actually hasn't hurt UCF all that much. They've gotten a couple key guys to step up Adrian Killins is leading the team in rushing, but actually UCF is one of the nation's leaders in rushing, despite really having a bunch of running backs by committee. Dredrick Snelson has improved from last year. They got a transfer, Trey Nixon from Ole Miss, who actually calls the Space Coast home. Went to high school over there. He came to UCF this offseason, and they've had an amazing year from Gabe Davis, a big 6'5" target that Mackenzie Milton has had no trouble finding downfield. So, after last year, 13-0, one of the nation's top offenses, if they stay put, Mark, I think that everyone's like, hey, this is great. And so far they've done that as advertised. There's really only one way to go but down. And so far they've managed to stay one of the nation's top offenses. The defense has been great. So far, I think above expectations for UCF.
UCF again at 6-0, 3-0 in conference play in the American. South Florida, of course, the final game. The Bulls also at 6-0, just 2-0 in the American Conference, and Temple as well, undefeated, as well as Cincinnati, who has surprisingly jumped into the class of undefeated teams after a 4-8 campaign last year. So before we move on to maybe bigger picture items here that surround this program over the last year and a half, and specifically right now, if we go to the Memphis game, that's the first game in which there was a big scare. There wasn't necessarily dominance from gun to gun in that one. And this is a schedule that also includes the ACC game against Pitt that obviously was a rout in that one. So Memphis not quite as good as they've been in recent years. What almost went wrong on Saturday?
Well, like I was saying, some of my compatriots that I run our podcast with, I was on the record with them last week saying, guys, there's just something about this game I don't like. Memphis, interestingly enough, in the 12 times that they played UCF previously, they won the first meeting all the way back in 1990 when UCF was a Division I AA team. Since then, UCF has beaten Memphis 11 in a row, including twice last year, once in Orlando and another time in the in the American Athletic Conference Championship game, in a game that went to overtime. UCF won by a touchdown. And the other issue with that is, this is a Memphis team that was hungry. Yeah, they lost Riley Ferguson and Anthony Miller, but they had Darrell Anderson at running back, the nation's leading rusher. He was outstanding, especially in the first half. We thought he might have a 400-yard game in that game, the way he was running in the first half. He was absolutely outstanding. And UCF, I think, was not ready for the not just what Darrell Henderson was doing, but for the emotion and the preparation that Memphis had in that first half. They were down. UCF was down 30-14, and they allowed Memphis to score on all 6 of their possessions in the first half. But they got a field goal before halftime, and then late in the third, the real turning point for the game was Josh Heupel rolling the dice on a 4th and 2 on his own 29-yard line. He initially sent the punt team out there. Then he sent what they call the tank formation, which is 3 backs in the backfield, like a wishbone formation. One of those backs is Tristan Hill, who's a 300-pound defensive lineman. And he threw the block of the year that sprung Taj McGowan for what turned out to be a 71-yard touchdown on 4th and 1 at the 29. And from there, UCF was within 1 score. Mackenzie Milton ran one in early in the 4th, and UCF was able to hold on defense for that 1-point win. It was a scare, man. The rain, it seemed like the game was being played in the rain in the second half. It seemed like everything was going against UCF. Right when the offense would get the momentum, in comes the rain, the slick conditions. Mackenzie Milton fumbled the ball away when nobody hit him, just dropped the ball because it was slippery. But they managed to pull it out, and that's one of those wins that you look back at and you're like, and it was a real trial by fire victory for this team. We've been waiting for a close game like this under the Josh Heupel regime, and lo and behold, it came to pass, and they passed that test with flying colors, I think.
Talking UCF football with Jeff Sharon. You can catch him on Black and Gold Banneret. It's the SB Nation platform for the Knights, and SB Nation having been very good to me over the years. And we've got a schedule with UCF at 6-0, 3-0 in the American. So it's East Carolina coming up this week, at Temple, and then Navy, always a tough out. And then the final two games, this is a fascinating scenario with three undefeated teams in the same division. When we look at, again, Cincinnati and South Florida, the last two opponents for UCF.
Yeah, yeah, I was going to say, Mark, the schedule actually breaks out for UCF, I think, fairly favorably. This is their last game outside of the state of Florida for the remainder of the regular season, because they play ECU in Greenville this Saturday. Then they have their open date on the 27th. Their first game back, home against Temple on a Thursday night. They get an extra couple days to prepare for Navy, so you know that you need all the time you can get to prepare for Navy with that offense. Then Saturday, November 17th against Cincinnati before they go to Tampa to play USF. So they don't leave the state, and really they don't even leave the I-4 corridor for the rest of the year, and they may not the rest of the year if they win the East and host the American Athletic Conference Championship.
Got Jeff Sharon on the line from Black and Gold Banneret. It's the SB Nation platform for UCF football. I understand, Jeff, I can't say Central Florida. I can't think that anymore. Is that correct?
That's correct. And no golden either. We dropped the golden 10 years ago. That's another thing that UCF, that the hashtag UCF Twitter Mafia is, they're kind of the grammar police for that.
And UCF stands for?
Under construction forever. Just kidding.
Okay. Right.
No, yeah, that's what it was when I was there. It was, but yeah,
Central Florida.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
our Central Florida.
No, you can't say Central Florida. You can only say UCF. But and it's in the media guide, it's in the game notes, it's in the whole thing. But
all right, folks. We got Claire Crawford standing by to talk Ohio State football a little bit later. Mike Laval on Tennessee and the SEC. Steve Dace from Michigan podcast as well. Got to hit you with this before we let you go, Jeff.
Yeah.
So another undefeated season is underway. You got a scare last week. The schedule is not daunting by national Power 5 standards. The last two games will be difficult with Cincinnati and South Florida, of course. How do we possibly evaluate this team? How do we do this?
There's only the thing that I say about UCF when it comes to do they get a shot at the college football playoff is, why is it that UCF has to do 2 years of work that only one team that every other team in the Power 5 conference has to do 1 year of work for? And we saw last year that their three toughest games were at the very end against USF, Memphis, and then they beat Auburn. Really, they probably should have wrecked Auburn in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. UCF had a bad first half. They were out of sync in the first half. It was bizarre what was going on. If they played in sync the way they played every other game, I think they would have won that game going away. But the way you evaluate UCF is, look, if you're saying that they don't play in a good enough conference in the American, well, look what they're doing to teams in the American. The Memphis game aside, that's a road conference game in the rain against a good team. I don't care what anybody says about Memphis. That's a good football team that Mike Norvell has over there. Look at what they're doing to that competition that they've been playing in the American. They're wrecking everybody in sight. If they get through and play impressive football against Cincinnati, against USF, and then again in the American Championship game, where they may likely face up against a team like Houston, who's also having a very good year, that team really scares the tar out of me, the Houston Cougars right now. I think UCF can make a very good case that, hey, look, we deserve one of those shots. Believe it or not, the one team that can probably get UCF and lock them out of a chance at the college football playoff is, of all teams, Notre Dame. Because I don't think that the committee is going to allow both Notre Dame, an undefeated Notre Dame, and an undefeated UCF, and knock out basically three of the Power 5 conferences. And it's unfortunate because we want to see the four best teams. And if UCF and Notre Dame are two of the four best teams, they should be in. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But at the very least, this is what happens when you leave these kinds of things to the foibles of human judgment. So we're just going to have to wait and see. But first things first, got to win all those games.
Jeff, it'll be a fascinating conversation for another time, but we don't know who the four best teams are.
I know we don't. I'm hoping that UCF is one of them. That's what everyone around here hopes. So
that's always my problem. And let's
yeah.
make the 4 best teams.
Right. Let me correct myself. Everyone around here in Central Florida knows that UCF is one of the 4 best teams in the country.
And I applaud that. I think it's great. Throw a parade. Throw another one this year. Hang the banner.
You got to have the reason. We got to have somebody. You got to have somebody rank us number 1, whether it's West Collie or Sagarin or somebody like that. We'll take it any way we can get it.
If you keep track of my rankings, you never know who I'm going to rank number 1. I'm usually the contrarian, so it might happen. All right, Jeff, I appreciate you stopping by. Again, it's Jeff Sharon from Black and Gold Banneret on SB Nation. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Claire Crawford joins us to talk the Buckeyes. Hey, Claire, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Jeff gets 2 points for foibles.
Foibles.
I'll take
yeah,
it.
You don't hear a lot of foibles referenced out there. That's good.
2 Buckeye helmet stickers for that one.
I was given props the other day at work for referring to something as a whirling dervish.
Oh,
so somebody had not heard that for quite some time.
That's I also agree. I have not heard that for quite some time.
All right. Hopefully no foibles in your day, Claire. Hope you're doing all right.
But I have felt like a whirling dervish.
Well, that doesn't surprise me because you are a whirling dervish.
That's true. That's true.
So the Buckeyes are tearing it up through the air. Record-setting performances out of Dwayne Haskins. I think most national analysts would say that this is right now, by the eyeball test, the second best team in the country. Again, I'm not going to make that evaluation right this second. We know how talented the roster is based on the recruiting. We know that they haven't been seriously challenged other than the Penn State game. And I mean that they've had to play the third quarters, but not seriously to the end, except for in Happy Valley. But there's a lot of issues, minor to a certain extent, but we don't know if they become major when the competition across the other side is Michigan State or Michigan.
And I think that's what we're seeing is we're hoping that these, quote, minor issues that we thought would be shored up as fans from the outside in don't start to aggregate together to end up becoming this snowball. The snowball starts small and then it just starts collecting and rolling downhill. You are a fellow former Ohioan and you live in the Northeast. I think we all start thinking about how well this passing game is going for Dwayne Haskins and the Ohio State offense. But then we start to think about, it's beginning to roll really hard into fall and into some nasty weather here in October and November in Ohio and in the Midwest. And if the Ohio State offensive line can't really get the run blocking going, and I say offensive line and run blocking because clearly Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins are proven, 1,000-yard rushers from the previous season, we are not seeing this offensive line run block as well as they could or as well as they should. And when that is just something that's not on the table, it's going to shut down a part of the offense. It's not going to get really keep everyone honest. And what happens when the weather gets not so great and you're really not able to go through the air as much as you'd like? We're seeing Dwayne Haskins. We're seeing an Ohio State quarterback for the first time. We're seeing a completely different complexion of this offense, and he's not terribly mobile. He can move outside the pocket, and we're extremely ecstatic about these vertical passes downfield. But it is disheartening to think that it may be a one-dimensional offense.
Yeah, and that really surprises me. For whatever reason, regardless of the dominance potentially of the defensive front, and we received obviously very difficult news concerning the long-range prospects of this team winning in postseason with Nick Bosa announcing that he's going to give up on the rest of the season and move on and prepare for an NFL draft. But that the defensive issues, again, because of the injuries and because of some of the things that we've seen in the last year and a half, don't surprise me as much as not being able to run the football against the likes of Minnesota and Indiana with one of the 5 or 6 best running backs in the nation, and with his running mate, Mike Weber, being one of the 20 or 25 best running backs in the nation, and with an offensive line that's experienced for the most part. That's difficult to watch.
It is difficult to watch, and it's still kind of this enigma, like you mentioned. When we talk, before the season starts, you and I talk about what some of the question marks might be for this Ohio State team, and one of them was that defensive backfield, and we were pretty right on that. As far as that not being a question that's shored up still, but I wouldn't have you probably couldn't have paid me to guess that Ohio State offense could really not get the ball rolling as well as they should with these 2 running backs. It really doesn't make a ton of sense. And you see flashes of it with both of those guys just because they are very talented. And we've seen what both of them can do. Mike Weber's a little bit dinged up, but nothing that's going to keep him out of the football game. And we're really not seeing it become an issue of a rhythm. They're doing a really good job of kind of keeping the hot hand in offensively, but they really aren't able to block like they should for these 2 guys. And it's a shame.
Got Claire Crawford on the line to talk Ohio State football with the Buckeyes with a road test at Purdue. The Boilers are hot. They lost their first 3 by narrow margins, and they've come back to win 3 consecutive games against the likes of Boston College. That a pretty impressive showing when the Eagles were ranked at the time and undefeated, and Purdue beat them by 17 points as a touchdown underdog at home. Their latest win, a thrashing of hapless Illinois 46-7 after giving up a first half touchdown. And then Purdue scoring points all over the place, 10th in the nation in total offense. Coming off a year in which they surprised everyone by making and winning a bowl game over Arizona, going 7-6. And you would think, okay, Jeff Brom, it's Purdue. They scored a ton of points. They were throwing the ball all over the field. Well, they tried to, but it was actually the defense that led the effort and just improved drastically from 2016 to 17. Now they've added the offense and got that part of the team up and running. David Blau is one of the top-rated quarterbacks in the nation right now. So, Claire, does this have an, I hate to say it, Iowa feel to it?
The butterflies in my stomach tell me that it might. They've got a bye week coming up after that, and it's not like it's a trap game because of that. But I truly hope that this team understands. They've talked about defensively the big play, and it's something that you and I have talked about. It's something that it has yet to become a solved issue. It is a huge, huge problem for this Ohio State defense and for a Purdue offense that's really rolling downhill now. It has the that creepy feeling as an Ohio State fan where you really want to be more confident about this game than you probably are right now.
Claire Crawford on the line to talk Ohio State football with the Buckeyes in the spotlight this Saturday night, which isn't a surprise. It isn't anything different, but the situation may prove to be their undoing because, like last year, just again, a mid-tier Big Ten team, road game. A couple of things that were pointed out to me this week is that like the Iowa situation last year, so we've got a night game, national television audience. I did see a number of comments here and there. Why would Purdue be on national TV against Ohio State? It's obviously a light week for college football, not a lot of huge matchups that were obvious choices for the primetime game. But I think ABC knows what it's doing in regards to, okay, Ohio State eyeballs on the sets. That's always going to happen. In addition to that, this could be a tricky, interesting game with Purdue throwing the ball all over the field at home. The crowd gets hyped if they get off to a good start, and we could have an interesting upset mix about 11 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday night. So I think that's what the networks are thinking there.
I do think that there's some sort of, if we're looking for the silver lining with this defense, last week we watched, the turning of a leaf of these corners and safeties being a little more hawkish and a few more turnovers than we've seen in the past couple weeks. So if we're looking for that, and we're looking for maybe, you know, a soft spot in the chink in the armor for Purdue, it's possible that this very aggressive Ohio State defense could possibly kind of change the tide with a turnover.
How are you enjoying the season, Claire? And I ask that with this thought in mind, that for a few storied programs out there that are on top of its game, like Alabama and Ohio State are right now, the fan base is spoiled, but the fan base is also in kind of a little margin for error that we can feel good. So it's almost like, yeah, we got Maryland this week. Well, who do we have next week? Or who do we have in 3 or 4 weeks? Because we have to win these next several games coming up, and we should win them impressively. And it's almost like a disappointment when it was 42-20. Why did we give up 20 points? We can't do that. And it's almost, it becomes a glance at the schedule and like, okay, well, we got 3, maybe 4 games. And the other one, we're just kind of biding time, and we're quick to jump and be critical of a team that's only going to win by 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Well, it's the luxury of being an Ohio State fan. It's the luxury of being able to critique wins. And I'm very sure there are coaches out there that would rather critique a win and have a fan base that is willing to critique a win than a team that's not winning. So partially we are extremely spoiled, and for good reason. I'm enjoying the season much like having a donut and eating this really decadent over-the-top donut and then having a stomach ache after eating this donut. It was great for a moment. It felt good. You probably know there's some things that are not great about it for you. And then after the fact, you kind of do this like, oh, that really actually didn't feel good at all. That's about how I'm enjoying the season. It's refreshing to see the quarterback play that we've seen out of Dwayne Haskins. It's refreshing to see some of these receivers finally step up and be able to make their mark. But there are some definitely some things that are red flags that as a fan and as an analyst, I'm looking at and really almost waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Claire, you've really hit home my problem in the whole approach to dieting, and that's that nothing bothers my stomach, and no combination of foods ever bother my stomach. I've got like a stomach lined with steel or something. There are no issues ever. I can eat anything. You know, it's like pizza topped off by a bunch of ice cream and cookies, and nothing ever. So I'm more motivated by the knowledge that you can't eat like that anymore, Mark. You're getting old.
They would have to peel me off the floor if I ate like that. Unfortunately, it's just not my MO. But yeah, that's about the best analogy I can leave as a fan.
Claire, I know you're paying attention, so I won't ask it in the way that I was going to. But you know, there's a team slightly north of the state border that's playing pretty well. They're playing pretty well. You know, they look pretty good right now.
To what team are you referring?
It ain't Michigan State.
It's not. However, they did put a wrench in the plans and the complexion of the East there in the Big Ten. And you're right. It's not Michigan State. It's Michigan. And I think, and I did say the M word. You know, as someone out from the outside looking in, and they're not playing exactly how that we thought they could. And I think they're still kind of an experiment right now. They're not exactly playing as well as they should, but they're what every Ohio State fan should be looking to at the end of the season. As a coach and as a player, you should be worried about Purdue, but certainly Michigan is going to be a bigger challenge this year, maybe than they have been in the last 5 or 6.
All right, I got Claire Crawford on the line talking Ohio State football with the Buckeyes taking on the Boilers of Purdue in West Lafayette. Ohio State won that game 56-0 the last time they traveled to Purdue. There's also a game that comes to mind, of course, in Urban Meyer's first year in 2012, a big overtime matchup with Purdue in which they were down 22-14 late. got the late touchdown, the 2-point conversion, won in overtime. The 2009 team that went to the Rose Bowl and beat Oregon actually slipped up in West Lafayette against a bad Purdue team on that particular day. So it's a series in which they're one of the opponents in the Big Ten, actually, that for whatever reason, the way the scheduling's been worked throughout the years, even before they went to division play, that Ohio State has actually, I believe, played less than anyone else. They just don't come up as much as other teams, but down through the years, they've had some interesting matchups when Purdue's been decent. There was a game back in 2000, Claire, you may recall, Drew Brees took his team to the Rose Bowl, and it was all due to a late fourth quarter bomb touchdown pass to knock off the Buckeyes in West Lafayette. Ohio State was en route to a Rose Bowl that year.
I think that's the year that he broke the record that JT broke last year, I believe. Yeah, it's not something that I would like for the Ohio State team to repeat this year.
Absolutely. So you join Claire at Buckeye Claire. No E.
No E.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. I don't even know what you would find if you put an E on it, but it's not good. I promise you.
I think I'm secure enough in our friendship that I can tell you it's slipped a few times. Now, it never was sent that way, but it slipped. What would that be? That whatever it is, yeah. Whichever finger slipped, and then I corrected that right away.
Thank goodness. I appreciate it.
Claire Crawford on the line talking Ohio State Purdue. Claire, enjoy the game.
Thank you.
And we hopefully will catch up to you soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, Claire. Thanks. Claire Crawford, Ohio State football right there. So we are going to post our conversations with Claire and all our Ohio State conversations, if you have yet to pick up on this, are posted to MarkRogersTV Ohio State. That's another YouTube channel that's a bit undersold at this point. MarkRogersTV Ohio State, all the Ohio State conversations are there. Miami fans, all the Miami conversations for the most part. I tried to, with some of the lengthy live streams we have over the weekend, with all these long, lengthy conversations that we have for 2.5 and 3 hours. I try to pick out, for example, the Miami talk, the Ohio State talk, the USC talk for those sub-channels that I have. Ohio State, MarkRogersTV Miami, MarkRogersTV USC as well. We have the phone lines open, 860-325-3687. We're waiting on Mike Laval from Last Word on College Football to talk Tennessee, Alabama. Steve Dace, Michigan podcast on the Wolverines matchup with Sparty this week. Let me get that number in the live chat. 860-325-3687. Meanwhile, I will check out what's in the live chat and remind you guys that as well, we've got a number of selections available for you at SG1 Sports. So I posted a Michigan State preview and prediction, Ohio State, Purdue. I also have Washington State and Oregon. There's an under-the-radar game in the Pac-12. There's two in the Pac-12 this weekend. We can't ignore the Pac-12. Many of you are fixated on the college football playoff, and it's basically dead for the Pac-12 at this point. Oregon would have the most life, but USC and Utah are playing an important game toward the Pac-12 South Championship, and in the North, it's Washington State and Oregon, both teams with one loss on the season. All right. 860-325-3687. Also at SG1 Sports this week, starting this Friday, will be a live stream at noon Eastern time at SG1 Sports, featuring myself. And then also Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So tons of live streams right here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, and also over at SG1 Sports. As we help them out, and they help us out right there. All right, let's look at the schedule. Emmanuel, there is no flirting on this show. I would not tolerate that. Absolutely not. This is a professional show here. There is absolutely none of that. If you guys have any comments for me to respond to, I probably miss them most of the time in the live chat. Give me a call, 860-325-3687. All right, who's playing this week? I am so behind it. Tomorrow night, unfortunately, I will be at work during the Stanford-Arizona State game. I know it doesn't really matter. I know both teams have played themselves out of it, but it's college football on a Thursday night, and there's an NFL game. So, yes, I would rather be here watching than talking about Stanford, Arizona State. But the powers that be have messed with my scheduling situation on the work front. All right, Saturday at noon. I love the noon games. I know the primetime games are the best ones typically, and the 3:30 games, and that's why they slot those games at those times, the best teams, the best matchups. But there's something about those noon games. I can't wait for college football. I miss it. And they're just that second and third level games that, as a hardcore college football fan, I get into. This is not an under the radar second or third tier game, though, at noon on Fox, noon Eastern time on Saturday. Michigan State. Oklahoma, TCU play at noon as well on ABC. Maryland, Iowa is an ESPN2 game. Cincinnati undefeated. Temple undefeated in the American Conference. And Wisconsin plays as well in the Badgers. Despite losing and getting obliterated at Michigan, this is the state of the Big Ten Western Division. Wisconsin still in the driver's seat. So those are the noon games, along with Auburn and Ole Miss on ESPN. And those are the games. So Michigan State gets my almost undivided attention. Oklahoma, TCU would be next. And then I would opt for a Maryland, Iowa, or maybe Auburn, Ole Miss. Man, Auburn's looked bad. Is Auburn the most disappointing team in college football this year? Leave your answers in the live chat. Most disappointing team through half the season. We played half the season. Almost everybody's played 6 out of 12. Some teams have played 7 of 12. Most disappointing team in college football. Auburn? How about UCLA? Or did we not expect much from them anyway? TCU's got 3 losses. Miami. Those are the teams that come to mind. Most disappointing. Wisconsin, I know they only have 2 losses, but BYU is a 23-point favorite and getting annihilated at Michigan. So at 3:30, we get geared up for the 3:30 games. Include Alabama, Tennessee on CBS, NC State, Clemson. That will be my game. NC State at Clemson, 3:30 Eastern time on Saturday on ESPN. Colorado, Washington gets a little bit of my time. Penn State, Indiana. There's really not a clear second choice there in terms of just seeing the best teams and the best talent. Alabama, Tennessee. Maybe I'll start with that game, or that'll be my secondary game to NC State, Clemson, knowing that it's most likely going to be Alabama 28-0 after the first quarter. And on the Big Ten Network is Minnesota, Nebraska, Wake Forest, and Florida State playing Tallahassee on ESPN2. Interesting non-conference game here in the SEC with Missouri hosting Memphis, coming off that 1-point loss against UCF. Keep in mind that we've already talked to Claire Crawford on Ohio State football, and also Jeff Sharon from Black and Gold Banner on the SB Nation platform for UCF football. I'm not allowed to say Central Florida, UCF, whatever that stands for, UCF football. And coming up soon, we've got Mike LaValle from Last Word on College Football and also Steve Dace, Michigan Podcast. Looking forward to those conversations. Later that night at 7 o'clock, there will be no doubt that I like LSU Mississippi State for almost a full quarter. LSU Mississippi State, then we'll see how that one's going. And we've got Ohio State and Purdue at 7:30. Also at 7:30, again, huge game in the Pac-12 North Division. Oregon with just the one loss to Stanford. Washington State with the one loss to USC. 2 5-1 teams go at it in Pullman. Washington State hosting Oregon. Kentucky with a possible trap game hosting Vanderbilt. Number 14, Kentucky hosting Vanderbilt at 7:30. At 8 o'clock, why is this game on the Pac-12 network? Utah and USC. I won't be able to see that. Meanwhile, ESPN2 picks up Arizona UCLA. It's got to be in the contract that maybe once or twice a season the Pac-12 gets its first choice. Maybe. Or gets a second choice to ESPN2's third choice. Because Fox clearly got the number one Pac-12 selection this week with Oregon, Washington State. Then I would think USC-Utah would be the next best game by far. Second most important matchup, and with USC in play and USC the brand name, Arizona-UCLA at 10:30. That's a 10:30 game, so that's not really opposite it. Arizona-UCLA at 10:30. And then we get that CBS Sportsnet game of San Jose State and San Diego State. Now, if you're watching that game, you are hardcore. This is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football for the smart fan. That would be you. We provide the best analysis, discussion, and debate with the best live chat room in college football. You guys have yet to name yourselves. And if you've made any comments toward me in the chat room, I try to find those, but tonight, forget it. I am way behind. And you're going to have to pick up the phone and call 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687. Mark, if you go to Reddit, you can watch the USC game. Just look up USC football live streams and people stream them. All right, 2KJ. Thank you. That's how I watch Bama games, because I don't have cable. Reddit. And people have told me that I should be on Reddit. I do have a college football Reddit page. It's just not a priority. And I have let that fall by the wayside. 2KJ says Reddit for games that aren't on the regular channels. Number one indie fan is tearing it up here. I miss when the weekday games were upset central. Now no highly ranked teams are playing during the week. It happens. Go Michigan, roll Tide. Cindy Buchanan. I'm sorry. That's Cody. Cody Buchanan. That is the first time I've seen your handle in the live chat. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please let us know what team you root for. I think you did just there. Go Michigan. I can interpret that. Go Michigan. I'm so used to saying that even when you put it in there, I still ask you for your team. Would also like to know how long you've been watching here at Mark Rogers TV. Mark, what do you think about Alabama LSU in a few weeks? Crimson and White 17. Still don't understand what the 17 refers to. I'm kidding. All right. And we've got helmets to buy. I know. LSU and Alabama. Alabama clearly a better team than LSU, more explosive. But LSU, if they play a near perfect game, could beat Alabama. They would be the one team in the SEC that could beat Alabama. Georgia, there's something missing. They obviously missed the leadership and experience from the 2017 team, because just based on sheer talent on the field, Georgia is the second best team in the SEC. Unless last week was a bit of an aberration, Georgia is not the second best team in the SEC. They will still have a few more games to claim their spot. Of course, the SEC Eastern Division is wide open. But back to Alabama and LSU. This may be the game where we see Joe Burrow have to throw the ball from start to finish. Now, the Auburn game was tight enough, and of course, they needed a last-second field goal for Burrow to have to shoulder the load of that drive on the final drive. But I mean for an entire game, like a scoring contest. And I don't expect Alabama and LSU to play a 42-38 game, but it might be high enough scoring because of the tremendous passing game for the Crimson Tide that Burrow's going to have to try to keep up with that to some extent. You can play that one way or the other. You can try to keep up with them, or you can say, we're going to fight your pace and we're going to try to slow it down. Running the football on the Tide, extremely difficult. It's obviously going to have to be a balanced approach, but Joe Burrow may have to, this may be the game against Alabama in a few weeks where Joe Burrow has to maybe throw it 35 times and complete 25 and throw for 300 and still be clean with no turnovers for LSU to have a chance. For one of the few times, or maybe the first time during this Alabama run under Nick Saban, the reason that the Tide seems invincible is not what we saw those LSU post-2011 teams have to face, and that's the suffocating front seven, where Leonard Fournette would come in with 225-yard games against the likes of Auburn and other SEC-level defenses, and then face Alabama and go 19 carries for 31 yards because he just was suffocated. The front seven was that good even against Fournette and NFL offensive linemen. This is more the Tides dominating from an offensive standpoint. The defense, that portion of it will be interesting to see if the defense is as good as it's been, because they've let up against the likes of Arkansas and Missouri and given up some points and some yardage. It's not necessarily against Missouri, but they gave Missouri opportunity that they didn't take advantage of, but they gave up big plays and they gave them field position that could have put some points up on the board if Drew Lock would have had a more precise game. Burrow is too inconsistent, but we've seen other inconsistent passers too, KJ. So the first person that comes to mind is Kellen Mond. If you would have told me Kellen Mond needs to beat Clemson, and Kellen Mond's going to have to complete 75% of his passes and throw for like 250 yards in the second half to keep up with Clemson, I would say, forget it, you're losing by 3 touchdowns. No, Kellen Mond stood up like a man in the second half, and he played better than he has his entire career. So I'm not comparing them as players. Kellen Mond and Joe Burrow are very different quarterbacks, but in regards to consistency level, Kellen Mond played out of his mind against Clemson in the second half in particular, and that's probably what LSU would need out of Joe Burrow to hang with the Tide. Appreciate you guys jumping on the line. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We come your way each and every day. Live streams on Wednesday night. Unfortunately, my live stream schedule will be changing a bit, but we should be committed here every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. If you're just joining us on the line, you may want to wait until the video processes in post. You go back and you catch Jeff Sharon of Black and Gold Banneret on the SB Nation platform for UCF football, and also Claire Crawford on Ohio State. Tennessee coming off a huge win as a double-digit dog on the Plains against Auburn, 14.5 points. I had a feeling about it, and I just couldn't pull the trigger. But Tennessee put a smile on Mike LaValle's face for 1 week at least. So Mike joins us from Last Word on College Football. How you doing, Mike?
Mark, it's a pleasure to be here. A lot of Tennessee fans, just like you, wanted to believe, but just couldn't pull the trigger on predicting the upset last weekend.
You know, I looked at that game and I thought these two teams, from a talent perspective, are probably fairly comparable. And Tennessee's got nothing to lose in the eyes of the public, while Auburn is disappointing us already. And so they've got to feel a bit tight, and they've not been playing well for a few weeks. So this could be prime for an upset. But yeah, again, I just couldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, I think where Auburn had the biggest talent discrepancy was the most important position, the front seven against Tennessee's offensive line, which has not been good at all this season. I think that's really what kept most people from pulling the trigger on that one is the clear discrepancy in talent between Auburn's front seven and Tennessee's offensive line. But in the end, the passing game kind of negated that, and the offensive line did okay in pass protection.
Mike, looking back at the game, I did not see a play. So you fill me in on what happened. I know it was topsy-turvy, and it went back and forth, and Auburn won it 30-20, or Tennessee won it 30-24. So just your thoughts, and want to remind everyone that if you want the game grades on the Tennessee efforts each and every week, you go check out Mike's posts on Last Word on College Football as he grades out the balls after each game.
So, I think it was, I think with Auburn, I think the game had to do as much with Auburn as it had to do with Tennessee. First of all, Tennessee played well as they've played all season. They finally were kind of clicking on all cylinders, with all the position units. But I think Auburn let Mississippi State beat them twice. They came in, they had two good drives to start the game. But Auburn, you could tell with Tennessee staying close, Tennessee, I think kind of out schemed Auburn. And I think with Tennessee staying close, that's really what caused Auburn to collapse in the third quarter. They just had a horrible third quarter. Fumbled their first kickoff return of the third quarter. Had a fumble six. Couldn't do anything on offense in the third quarter. So I really think Auburn let Mississippi State beat them twice. Tennessee took the lead in their third quarter. You could tell in the stadium, and you could tell by the demeanor of the Tigers team that they kind of felt that weight of disappointment come on them. Tennessee, meanwhile, did their part to secure the victory. Like I said, it was the most fundamentally sound they've played across many aspects. Tackling on defense, clearly the best game they've had so far this season. And on offense, Tyson Helton, the real big difference was Tyson Helton really opened up the playbook. He exploited the one area where Tennessee had the advantage. The Volunteers wide receiver corps has been the best unit on the Tennessee field all season long. They're not super fast, but they're big, physical receivers with strong hands. If you look at Jarrett Guarantano's 328 yards, he was 21 for 32, 328 yards. If you look at the deep passes, and he had several, 4 or 5 that were in the air over 30 yards. Every one of those was a 50-50 ball. The Tennessee receiver was just bigger, more athletic, and went up to get it, high point it and get up and get it, and really just out-muscled the Auburn defender for that ball. That's really what made the difference in the game. Tennessee's vertical passing game was clearly the difference in that game.
This kid, Josh Palmer, a sophomore, we know about Jawan Jennings. He's been around the program. He's caught big passes in big games in the past, but Josh Palmer only caught 9 last year. What do we know about him?
Well, they're deep at receiver. Marquez Callaway and Jawan Jennings are the number 1 guys. Josh Palmer got a little bit more action today or Saturday. He took a few of the snaps from Brandon Johnson. So between those 4, Marquez Callaway, Jawan Jennings, Brandon Johnson, and help me out, Mark.
Palmer, Jennings,
Palmer,
Callaway, and Johnson.
Yeah, that's how deep they are. Brandon Johnson and Josh Palmer. And then you have, you saw Saturday, Tennessee likes to use Ty Chandler out of the backfield too. He had a 40-yard reception as well. But Palmer's probably the fastest of the 4. But like I said, they're all kind of the same. They're all big, tall, strong receivers. The guys, when you're at the 30-yard line and in, you look for to do the fade routes in the end zone. They just go up and get it. And so they're all kind of very similar, and they're all very trustworthy with the 50-50 balls. Of the 4, Palmer's the fastest.
So Mike, as a guy that watches every play of every game, and for a team that there wasn't a whole lot expected of, you were hoping to get them to a postseason spot with 6 wins. Would you rate this as a monumental game? Is this going to be the type game that in a year or 2 you look back, oh, they beat Auburn, but this wasn't the Auburn team that we expected in week 7 to show up ranked 7th or 8th in the country? They've just fallen off and haven't been that team.
Yeah, I wouldn't classify this a monumental game. I think this was, this was a very important game. When you look back or when you look forward this year, you saw that 5-game stretch: Florida, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, and South Carolina. You would have liked to have had one of those games. Tennessee kind of really fumbled the game against Florida. Obviously, with 6 turnovers in that game, wasn't competitive in that game. Kind of kept it a little bit closer, a lot closer than most people thought against Georgia. Of course, now after seeing Georgia get trounced at LSU, people are starting to question the validity of Georgia as the top-ranked team in the nation. But winning the game at Auburn gives Tennessee a different outlook on the rest of the season. Instead of being 2-4 with almost no hope of a bowl game, now they're 3-3. You look at Alabama, that's probably going to be a loss, 3-4. But you enter that back stretch of the season, 3-4. You got games against South Carolina, which you think now is pretty winnable. You got a game against Missouri, which might be winnable. You got a game against Kentucky, which is probably, Kentucky's probably going to have the advantage there. You got Charlotte, that's a win. All right. And then you've got Vanderbilt, which you think is winnable as well. So you take out Charlotte and Alabama, you add those to the current 3-3, that makes it 4-4. So to get bowl eligible, all Tennessee has to do is win 2 of 4 between South Carolina, Kentucky, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. I think people around the program think that's doable. If you look at Tennessee, they've looked better every week. The difference between Tennessee last Saturday and the Tennessee that played West Virginia is clear and unmistakable if you look at the film. They have continued to progress each week, particularly on defense. If the offensive line can get a little bit better and if the offensive line can make a little bit of improvement, those games against South Carolina and Vanderbilt are very winnable, and Tennessee stands a chance against Missouri and Kentucky. That win against Auburn is not monumental. It's not program defining or anything like that. But it is important for this season and to build momentum. And I've always, I say this every year, getting to a bowl is so important, not necessarily because of the recruits and not necessarily because of the money, but because of the extra practices, the 15 extra practices in the winter, in December, particularly for a young team like Tennessee that has brand new coaches. Those 15 practices are invaluable as they look to build into a 2019 season.
Got Mike Laval on the line from Last Word on College Football as Tennessee defeats Auburn 30-24, and because of the Vols' draw out of the SEC Western Division, they always face the Tide. They face what was the best or second best team or the division winner last season in Auburn. So they get the worst draw. But hey, if they're going to be bad, you might as well face it this year and then face some little bit of a lighter touch on down the line. Mike, as an SEC guy, your thoughts on not just the Auburn team right this second based on what you saw on Saturday, but what was being discussed during the broadcast in regards to kind of a narrative of this program that Gus Malzahn gets a big contract extension kind of based on what they did within a 3-week time frame and beating 2 number 1 teams last year. Jarrett Stidham, I don't know that I've heard such polar opposite evaluation of his play both last season and now this season. Some people really like him, think he's an NFL quarterback. Others are like, guys, average. I saw him play against Washington pretty much every play and against LSU. Thought he acquitted himself fairly well, but didn't look great by any stretch. Just your thoughts about Auburn.
Yeah, I was in the stadium on Saturday. Just the general consensus, a lot of frustration. They know there's talent on their team, and there is. The fan base is just frustrated, and it's kind of with Auburn, it's consistency. They'll be, they beat Washington, the favorite in the Pac-12 in week 1, and then they come back and they lose to Mississippi State and then Tennessee, a team that had an 11-game conference losing streak and hadn't won against an SEC West team in 8 years. So Auburn fans were certainly not happy to be the ending of 2 pretty bad streaks for Tennessee. But there's frustration. They know they can't do much with Malzahn. With a $32 million buyout. So he's there for a couple years. What I found to be kind of interesting is most of the frustration is centered on their offense rather than their defense. If you look at Tennessee's offense, they have not been able to do much all season. They come in and they put 30 up on Auburn, and 3 of those were field goals that 2 of which should have been touchdowns. So Tennessee's really looking at a 40-plus game on the field against Auburn. But most of the fans there and most of the reaction on the radio was centered around their offense. They just looked out of sync. And people are starting to question why Malzahn would continues to stick with or continue to bring in what they consider pro-style quarterbacks in his offensive scheme. But just a lot of frustration on the Plains. It was a lot of sadness, not Cleveland level sadness, but a lot of sadness on the Plains there Saturday evening.
All right, Mike Laval from Last Word on College Football. Before we let you go, Mike, want to get your take on the SEC, where the Eastern Division has suddenly become a lot of fun with games upcoming with Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and Georgia. Of course, the Florida-Kentucky game having already been played, and the Wildcats holding their own throughout the season, winning some really big games, only losing the one overtime game on the road to Texas A&M.
Yeah, first of all, I still think Georgia's the class of the East. I think there's just too much talent there. We'll see. But, the East is tired of being the doorsteps of the SEC. Tennessee's went over Auburn. Florida went in and beat LSU. So there is some life over in the SEC other than Georgia. It's good to see that Georgia's going to have to compete for the East this year. There's still, I think, 5, 6 teams that control their own destiny in the SEC, that being either undefeated or one-loss teams. If any of those 6 teams win out, they'll be the conference champion, and almost assuredly a one-loss SEC champion makes it to the CFP. So you really still have 6 teams that control their own destiny in the SEC. And as we enter Week 8, that certainly makes for compelling conference viewership there in the SEC. A lot of big matchups still to come. You got Auburn, Alabama, Texas A&M is still in play. Has a very competitive schedule down the stretch. Of course, Florida, Georgia. It will go a long way to determining the East as well. So a lot of high stakes football yet to be played.
So as Mike alludes to right there, basically there's a measurement between the East and West. And since Urban Meyer left Florida and Nick Saban took over at Alabama, there was a balance of power there that has shifted decidedly toward the West. The East has not won a championship game since. And up until the last year, obviously, when the Bulldogs beat the Auburn Tigers in the rematch game. But they play 14 games each year. So they play, the 7 games, 2 games between each division. So 7 teams, 2 games. So there's a 14 games, and it's usually 11-3, 10-4, where the West wins. But the count's going to be rather close this year.
Yeah, I think down the stretch you'll see. So Ole Miss has still got to play Vandy. Alabama has still got to play Tennessee. So the West is still going to come out on top, but it's going to be much closer. And if you look at the product on the field, it's with the eye test, it's much closer this year than it has been. Again, Tennessee's win against Auburn was pretty big. Florida over LSU, a one-loss LSU team that really put a whooping on Miami opening weekend.
Florida, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Mississippi State.
Absolutely. Mississippi State was a dark horse team entering the season, bringing that high-powered offense back with Joe Moorhead as the new coach. And then Mississippi State has floundered, not because they're a bad team, but just because they have a really tough schedule playing in the SEC West. So, I think it'll still end up the West leading that count in the end, but it's going to be much closer than people would have expected starting this season.
Yeah, and Texas A&M and South Carolina over the weekend, a toss-up that went the West way, but only 26-23. All right, Mike Laval from Last Word on College Football again, especially if you're a Tennessee fan and want to really lock in on analysis after the game. Join Mike on Last Word on College Football, and you'll get the full breakdown of all the positional grades as Tennessee takes on Alabama. Maybe tough grading this week. You're going to have to really skew the learning curve. The grade curve is going to have to be out of whack, I would think, this week, Mike, considering the guys on the other sideline.
Tennessee played well. There's no doubt about it. This isn't as big of a win, I think, as people are making it out to be. But the bottom line is the Tennessee team played well on Saturday, and they deserve the high marks that they get for playing well. Additionally,
I'm alluding to next week's grade.
Oh, yeah.
Next coming up against Alabama. You're going to have to really grade on the curve.
Yeah, to 28.5. But again, Tennessee is not going to win that game. But you got Alabama coming in. They'll be their 8th game in a row. A lot of expectations. A lot of people are going to be watching Tagovailoa's knee. They had a couple injuries last week. For the exception of Jonathan Kongbo, Tennessee should be coming into the game pretty healthy. I think 28.5 may have been a bit of a big line. Having said that, Alabama put about 250 on Tennessee last year, so I don't know. But I think what Tennessee fans are going to be looking for is not so much the line. or the grading on the curve aspect, they're going to be looking for continued improvement in this team. And the most important area is going to be the offensive line, no doubt.
Michael Hall from Last Word on College Football. We've got one of Mike's colleagues standing by to talk some Oklahoma with Jason Ray. Mike,
all right,
we appreciate the time.
Mark, always a pleasure. Enjoy your chat with Jason and Kevin coming up later.
Absolutely. Got them both coming on at the same time here. So we'll suit Jason up and get him on deck, as well as Kevin in the hole, I guess. So, Jason, appreciate you jumping on board to talk some Oklahoma football. Uh-oh. Can't hear Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks
there
for
we
having
go.
me.
So the Sooners went down, of course. So we've got to talk about the Red River rivalry shootout. There's another term for it. There's a number of them out there. What's the other one?
Showdown. I think it's
the showdown, the shootout, the rivalry. So I thought Texas was going to win the game. I certainly wasn't convinced of it. Of course, Oklahoma's been winning that game most of the time. They've been the class of the league for 10 years. But Texas just appeared to be physically more dominating in that game. That seemed to be the difference. They were the tougher team.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. They were the tougher team, and I think it was one of those things that you could see from the outset, especially on the Texas offensive line. You know, they pushed around the Sooners defensive line all game long. You know, and one of the things about that rivalry is, Oklahoma's not played well over the last few years in that game, and they've been able to come out on top over the last couple of years, but they just haven't played well. So, and a lot of times in that game, it kind of brings out the weaknesses that you have as a team kind of going through the first part of the year, and that was absolutely evident on the defensive side of the ball. I think going in, being there and watching the game, kind of going into it before the game actually started, you thought if Oklahoma could hold Texas to about 31, 34 points, the Sooners could come out on top. Texas is better with Ellinger. He's got those Colin Johnson and Humphrey out there at the receiver position. Are very, very tough, very physical receivers. But never thought, even with the struggles that the Sooners have had on defense all year, never thought that they would get 48 points coming out of that game.
Yeah, because Texas has not been an offensive juggernaut by any stretch. Now, in this particular game, what stood out to me, in addition to Oklahoma being, boy, I hate to use this term. I hear it all the time, and I think, man, this is poor grammar. Out-physicaled. Colin Johnson and little Jordan Humphrey just picking on those Oklahoma corners. That was big in this game.
Absolutely, it was big. I think, a couple of the big plays in the game was Texas had a couple of 3rd and 19, like a 3rd and 19 and a 3rd and 20. And I think, just looking at it, it's sort of a microcosm of the way the defense is right now in terms of being out physical, maybe low effort. There was a 3rd and 19. I think they threw a little bit of a screen pass to little Jordan Humphrey. He carried about 4 Sooners for about 9 yards. And I think, and Texas went ahead and went for it on 4th down and converted. And that was a big play in the game. But, like I said, that play right there was just kind of tells the story on, whether it's bad tackling, whether it's lack of effort, or whether it's just, being out physical at the point of attack. That was a glaring outcome of the game.
We got Jason Ray on the line talking Oklahoma football. You can join Jason on Last Word on College Football. What are you working on this week? What can we find under your name there at Last Word?
Yeah, we actually published an article this morning around, kind of looking at the attendance concern within college football. I know Nick Saban came out early in the year. I think it was the game against Louisiana where the student section was by and large empty. So took a little bit of an opportunity, specifically with the Oklahoma bye week last week, and really looking at a few aspects. What's causing the drop and decline. I think in last year, 2017, I think it was the biggest decline in attendance in the last 35 years. and at the FBS level. So there's a lot of contributing factors to that. I think there's a little bit of that kind of goes to the cost of the ticket prices, and and parking, and with a family of four, it can be a little bit expensive. And obviously, television has put a big damper in that. It's hard to not find a game, whether it be on cable or whether it be on a streaming device. And so we take a look at that a lot, and then we have a weekly Heisman kind of preview that we talk through, and our staff there at Last Word on College Football. We rank our we kind of rank our top five. We give a breakdown of where that is each and every week.
Jason, what I love about this conference, the Big 12, is that in just about every other conference, you can pull about a handful of games and say, if all we care about is the conference championship, then these 4 or 5 games are key. In the Big 12, especially with Oklahoma slipping up, now it's like throw out Baylor, maybe, although they took Texas to the wire. So I don't know who to throw out. Kansas, of course, even though they've gotten much better, still throw them out. Although, within 2 scores of West Virginia, they kept it within the ballpark. It's just like there's so many games. There's like 3 or 4 games every week that you don't know who's going to win. I certainly had thoughts that Iowa State was going to do what they did last week, but they came in at 2-3. But it didn't surprise me, and I picked them actually to win the game last week against West Virginia. I took the points. I'm not going to claim the win there. I took the points. That's right. I won the game, and Iowa State also ended up winning the game. But I also picked them against Oklahoma State. They were a big underdog in that game. So we don't know who's going to win these games. I think there's still a hierarchy, but it's a deep league.
Yeah, it is a very deep league, and you look at the offense that West Virginia throws out there with Will Greer and the team, and for Iowa State to hold him to 100 yards, really one offensive touchdown in the game was quite remarkable. So you have Iowa State, you have obviously Texas alone at the top of the Big 12 right now. But they have a bye week, and they face Oklahoma State next week. Oklahoma itself really hasn't gotten to the meat of the schedule in terms of some of the tougher teams in the Big 12. They go to TCU this weekend, and then they still travel to Lubbock to play Texas Tech, and then they have obviously Oklahoma State and West Virginia towards the end of the year. But yeah, I mean it's almost kind of a flip of the coin. You could probably look at about 4 or 5 different teams at this point, and they both have, and all of those teams have valid arguments to be able to stake a claim to that Big 12, with obviously Texas kind of leading the way at this point.
We got Jason Ray on the line from Last Word on College Football, setting us up for Oklahoma and TCU. I've seen the Horned Frogs play quite a bit this year. I saw about half the game against SMU. I saw the big Ohio State game. I saw who in the world did they play last? I saw most of the Texas game, and I've seen some other games here and there. Anyway, they've already lost 3 games. And but they have talent. They'll be ready to play. Sean Robinson's been a little bit suspect, a bit inconsistent. Kind of handicap this one as Oklahoma has to travel to TCU.
Yeah, it's one of those things where TCU, I think they've lost their last 2, and they've actually scored a total of 31 points in the last two games at home. They were able to beat Iowa State late 17-14, and then of course last Thursday night lost to Texas Tech at home. So I think coming into this game, TCU's not one of the best offensive teams in the Big 12, but Oklahoma's near dead last in the conference, and with all the changes through the bye week, it's hard to kind of comprehend what the mindset of that Sooner team will be, specifically defensively. There's some talk a little bit about some changes, but Ruffin McNeil and Bob Diaco that's kind of taking over as interim defensive coordinator, and Bob Diaco's taking over as the defensive line coach where Ruffin McNeil was previously. So there's a lot of talk on moving to more of a 4-2-5, 4-3 hybrid versus the 3-4 that they have been playing over the last couple of years. There's some lineup changes. I would look for some changes at the safety position. Khalil Houghton and Justin Broyles have been playing, have been starting all year. Not been playing very well, specifically tackling has been kind of an epidemic around the entire team. So look for, I would definitely look for Jordan Parker, who played. He was a cornerback his first 2 years at Oklahoma. He's made the switch to safety. I would look for him to crack the starting lineup. I would also look for Robert Barnes to play at safety. So it's kind of a first game. It has a feel of the first game with all the changes and obviously the coordinator change on defense. But TCU they always, under Gary Patterson, they always have a solid defense. So it'll be interesting to see if that Sooner offense, who played, still played really, really well, obviously well enough to win against Texas, if they can, kind of maintain that play, and Kyler Murray can kind of maintain his solid play through the first half of the year.
Oklahoma back at it on the field against TCU in the Big 12, looking for another Big 12 championship game appearance. Of course, those two teams faced twice last year, the second time in the title game, with Oklahoma pulling off the sweep. We got Jason Ray on the line from Last Word on College Football. Jason, we appreciate you stopping by.
All right, thanks for having me, Mark.
All right, good stuff. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, coming your way each and every day with videos and live streams. So we have posted to SG1 Sports previews and predictions on Michigan, Michigan State, also Ohio State and Purdue. Also have two videos coming out tonight. One is a look at Week 8 betting lines right here at Mark Rogers TV. And then also we've got a betting lines video that we have posted to SG1 Sports as well, coming up later tonight. We got Kevin McGuffey waiting in the wings from Last Word on College Football to talk Kentucky with Vandy in town, right, Kevin?
Yeah, Vandy, 7:30 game, SEC Network, under the lights, and it's homecoming. So Cats had a bye week last week. They've got a couple people who are banged up. They've got should be back this week on the offensive line. So should be a good game. I think Kentucky's going to win. I think it may be closer than some people think, but we'll see.
Well, Kevin, you're usually the trap game. Now you have trap games on your schedule. This is how Kentucky has risen.
That's true. That's a very good point. I hadn't somebody else had mentioned something like that similar today, that that this Vanderbilt game, as for years Kentucky was like, the trap game going to the next week's bigger game, and it's absolutely true. With the Vandy game, Kentucky has Vandy this week, then they go to Missouri, and then 2 weeks is as I called it, assuming everything holds true, would be the biggest game in Kentucky football in 11 years, which would be that Georgia game on November 3rd, which, hard as it is to believe, could probably going to decide the SEC East.
Absolutely. So we've talked about it several times here, Kevin, over the last several weeks about Kentucky's emergence here. The one loss, nothing to be ashamed of, in overtime against Texas A&M. But we're going to take a more critical eye here. So we've reveled in the emergence over the last month with you, Kevin. What do you think needs to improve on this football team to stand with the likes of Georgia? Well,
the post that actually just went live earlier today at Last Word on College Football, one of the things I talked about is the the passing game. If you go back and watch the South Carolina game, that second half, Kentucky's only scored one touchdown in the last 6 quarters, offensive touchdown, and they're guarding. And then you watch the A&M game, they're putting 8 guys in the box at the line of scrimmage and just daring the the Cats to beat them through the air. And so far it hasn't happened. Benny Snell had his lowest output of the season, 60 yards and only 13 carries. That's been a big topic of conversation around here for the last 2 weeks. That's I think only the third least amount of carries Snell's ever gotten in since he's been at Kentucky. And of course one of those was the bowl game where he got tossed against Northwestern. That's going to be the biggest thing. Teams are going to continue to do that, and they're going to make Terry Wilson try to beat them through the air. Whether it's hitting Lynn Bowden, Taven Richardson, Dorian Baker, 1 or 2 times a game. They seem to remember they have one of the best tight ends in the SEC in C.J. Conrad, and he'll break off a couple of nice runs. And on passes. But anyway, that's the biggest thing is trying to work on that passing game. One thing that this bye week, came at a really good time. Two of the starting offensive linemen, Nasir Watkins and Drake Jackson, who were, Watkins got hurt, I think, in the South Carolina game. He's supposed to be back on Saturday. And then Drake Jackson, the center, he had a groin injury and missed most of the A&M game. And so, they're hoping that's going to obviously help on the line against a Vandy team who's second to last again in rushing defense in the SEC.
All right, we got Kevin McGuffey on the line from Last Word on College Football talking about the Cats. They face Vanderbilt coming up on Saturday. Kevin, I just posted a video where I was going through various SEC college football playoff scenarios. Kentucky, they're the wild card. I'm not predicting them to get to the college football playoff, but they're the wild card here. So Kevin, in the past, we have talked to you and had a great time bringing you on because we just enjoy talking to you first and foremost, but also because I like to cover everyone. I'll talk about Kansas and Baylor and whoever, but now we have to have you on. Kentucky's a force.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard to hard to believe, but it just it just goes back to what Coach Stoops and the staff have been saying for 6 years. Just give us some time. Patience. This is something that's very rare in major sports these days. The win now mentality. And it's paid off this year. They have the four guys. Josh Allen and Mike Edwards and Conrad and Jordan Jones, who could have gone to the NFL last year and all decided to come back because they said we want to play for an SEC championship. And of course, most of the national people were like, okay, whatever. It's nice to have dreams. And, now here we are, if Kentucky wins out, basically they control their own fate. If they own the tiebreaker with Florida and if they beat Georgia, they're going to be the SEC East champions if they continue to win. So yeah, it's really exciting. It's the most, most excitement around the team. Probably you go back to that 2007 season, that started so well, knocked off number 1 LSU. So it's been really, it's been really good. It's kind of knocked, the basketball, team has started practice and everything. You're not hearing just, usually you get to mid-October and it's like, okay, well, it's basketball season, woohoo. But, you're not really hearing that this year, and it's been great.
All right, Kevin, keep stealing those recruits out of Ohio, and you've got a chance.
Yeah, definitely. Ohio, Georgia, Florida, that, they're really, they even brought in, moving into Michigan now, got a couple of guys from, this past year's class. So
Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football. Thanks for stopping by, Kevin. Vandy, Kentucky coming up on Saturday. Thanks, Kevin.
All righty. Thanks, Mark, for having me on as always. I really appreciate it, and hopefully talk to you after the game Saturday night.
Definitely. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Saturday, Michigan State, get it on in East Lansing. Of course, you're watching Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, where we bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry. We appreciate Steve Dace from Michigan Podcast standing by here. Steve, how you doing tonight?
I'm well, Mark. How are you, man?
I'm doing just fine. I expected you to be a little more chipper. That's worn off since Saturday night, I guess.
Yeah, we're now heading into what's become a tradition, unlike any other perennial inventing a way to lose to Michigan State. So anxious to just get this one out of the way and take our beating and get it over with.
Well, my read on you, and I don't think I've had to be a genius to do this because you've made it very plain to everyone when you've joined us, is that you've held firm to the evaluation that it's Jim Harbaugh and this program's growing and developing and building even through the 4 regular season losses last year. Then that South Carolina effort really got to you. And then you wanted to see proof during the offseason. Of course, you're not going to get it, but you were basically declaring we need to see it on the field now.
Mm-hmm.
The Notre Dame game was a disappointment, not a blowout, but they were outplayed on the road. And I know you didn't, not just the loss, but you were not feeling good about maybe where the program was at that point. But everything since then, the trajectory has just risen and risen and risen. That was not a vintage Wisconsin team that you beat on Saturday night, but it's still Wisconsin. and it was a dominant performance.
It was. And, it's the worst loss in a regular season game Wisconsin's had since 2008. It's the first time in 33 Big Ten road games they lost by more than a touchdown. And the only two teams that have beaten them since 2011 by more than 10 points won the national championship that year, Alabama and Ohio State. So, it's the most rushing yards against a ranked opponent for Michigan since 2000. So, it was a statement win, no question about it. And Saturday night was a lot of fun. But, I have said on Michigan podcast several times in the last, as you've referenced, going back to the South Carolina game, for me, the M also stands for Missouri, as in you got to show me, okay? And I don't drink any Kool-Aid anymore. I don't project anything. I did predict us to get to 10-2 at the beginning of the year in my preview. I didn't think a team would get out of the East with 2 losses. I'm still not sure a team will get out of the East with less than 2 losses. But now that we're in season and analyzing it game to game, and you look at my preseason preview, one of the 2 losses I thought we were going to have was this game. Okay, so until I see us go on the road and win a game against a ranked team, I'm just, and I don't know why anybody else would really. It's a totally different program when they put on the white jerseys. We have seen it for several years now. We've seen it throughout the Harbaugh era. They will beat Maryland 59-3 one week at home in 2016 when they're ranked number 2 in the country. Then they'll go on the road to Iowa, drop a touchdown, drop a first down pass, lose 13-12. It's a different team on the road. It reminds me a little bit of the John Navarre era at Michigan, where he was cash money at home and would suck often on the road. And I used to, on my radio show at the time, I used to refer to it as John Bizarre. Some bizarre throws and reads with the white jersey. It's like a totally different player. And it's just like bizarro world player. And of course, when your quarterback does that, rest of your team is going to do that as well. So, when I look at the game in terms of personnel, I don't really believe there's an advantage for Michigan State in terms of personnel. I think Michigan State's run defense is really good, but I think on average, the rush defenses they've played are something like 53rd in the nation. I think our offensive line is a dramatic improvement. Ed Warner's done a great job there. I think Shea Patterson's a better quarterback than Brian Lewerke. When they're healthy, I think Sparty has a better receiver core, but they're not healthy right now. And so I think our receiver core is better. They don't have any tight ends. We have like 4 of them. Their defense is good. Our defense is kind of like theirs, but with better athletes. This should not be a game Michigan loses. But you know what? Mark shouldn't have dropped the damn punt snap in 2015. We went in there in 2016 when they sucked, and we had 19 NFL players on the roster and won by 9 points. So last year we're in a monsoon for reasons only Allah knows, and we're chucking and ducking 70 times with John O'Corn at quarterback in a freaking monsoon, throwing 5 picks and losing 14-10. It's something every year. And I think what happens in our league is, and it's not just with Jim, I've seen Urban Meyer do it, where he just got suckered into not giving the ball to Ezekiel Elliott in a driving rainstorm. Mark D'Antonio did this to James Franklin last week. He imposes his will on the other coaches in our league. I think he intimidates them on game day. I think he so convinces the coaches in our league they have to do something different, new. And that's kind of this scam where there's all this going on, but really you just need to play your game. And that's what he's going to do. And until we see Michigan with the white uniforms go into a hostile environment against a team that's got a number in front of their name, I don't know. I was sitting there in the stands at Northwestern. That was a veritable home game for Michigan. I made the treacherous trek through Chicago traffic with my son to that game. And it was 17-0 before the game even got started. They decided the game started like an hour and a half later than, the scheduled kick. So I don't know what to say about the game on Saturday, other than I'm picking Michigan State to win until Michigan goes in there and proves they can beat a team with a number in front of their name on the road.
Oh, boy. It's those damn white pants. You shouldn't have switched from the gold to the white or the maize to be more accurate.
I don't know. We haven't beaten a ranked team on the road, Mark, since we beat number 2 Notre Dame in September of 2006. So we wore a lot of those road games with maize pants the last 12 years and didn't win any of those either. So, I think it's a culture thing. I think it's and you know, a lot of teams don't beat ranked teams on the road. I think Michigan State and Penn State's record combined against teams on the road that are ranked in the last 5 years when they're not playing each other is like 3-11. Okay. Not a lot of teams not called Alabama or until last weekend, Georgia, go on the road and beat a lot of ranked teams. It's hard to do. But you know what else is hard to do? Not doing it once in 12 years, Mark. Not doing it once in 12 years is pretty hard. So until we do it once, I'm not picking us to do it.
So I would not be shocked if you've done the research on this, but I'm guessing there are at least a handful of lowly programs that have knocked off a road opponent that was ranked during that time frame.
I've not done the research because I gave up cutting myself for Lent.
We got Steve Dace on the Line from Michigan podcast. Vegas believes in you. Solid 7-point favorite.
Okay.
Okay. All right. It's Michigan.
I think sometimes, you know, Mark D'Antonio is 17-5-1 against the spread as an underdog at Michigan State. Since 2009, he's got 10 wins over top 10 teams. Okay. So again, they're really beat up. And they'll get some of those guys back. I mean, one thing we know about Michigan State is if anybody can walk, if there's anybody who has full motor function on football scholarship, they will be in uniform on the field. Magic Johnson will be in uniform. Lorenzo White, Percy Snow.
Kirk Gibson. Let's throw him in.
That's right. Everybody's freaking playing Saturday. We know that. All right. It's their game of the century every year. So this is really, I don't think, we know what Michigan State's going to be. And I said the same thing about the Wisconsin game last week. Wisconsin has an identity as a program. We know who they're going to be. And you even saw when we got up by a couple of scores, they didn't go out of their brand of football. And so last week's game was really about, we know Michigan is a very talented team. What we don't know is if it's a good team yet. And I think last week we learned it can be a good team. And, you know, when they have the amount of talent they do, and they didn't have any turnovers, and they committed one penalty, I don't know, you know, if we're going to do that with the kind of talent we have, maybe other than that team in Tuscaloosa, I don't know anybody else in the country that's going to beat us if we're going to play clean like that. But Mark, I mean, I know you're a college football savant. When was the last time you saw Michigan wearing a white uniform against a team that wasn't, you know, pronounced dead at the scene, that played clean in that setting? When was the last time you saw it, Mark?
Well, we can erase the years 2008 to,
sure,
aside from 2011, that Sugar Bowl season.
Right.
So the Sugar Bowl team, they didn't beat anyone on the road. Apparently not.
In fact, they were 6-0. Remember who their first loss was to? Come on, you know.
2011.
Yeah, it was at Michigan State and East Lansing. They started 6-0.
Okay. And
their first loss was to Sparty and East Lansing. Yeah.
All right. We're talking Michigan football, the big game at Michigan State, East Lansing, 7-point favorite. And I think you brushed through the pluses and minuses, and mostly pluses in the Michigan side, with Michigan State not running the ball like you would think a typical Michigan State team would.
Brian Lewerke's
and they haven't been good running the ball for the last few years.
No. Brian Lewerke's their leading rusher. And until last week, LJ Scott, who hasn't played since week 2, was their leading rusher. Their offensive line, you know, I interviewed one of their guys, Rico Beard from Spartan Beat on Michigan podcast this week. And it sounds like our offensive line last year. You know, I think I told you last year we played 13 different offensive line combinations. Is that bad? That's bad. Yeah, for those scoring in bed, that's very bad. You don't want to have to play more than 3 or 4 different offensive line combinations, because that means you have a ton of injuries and or a lack of execution. And cohesiveness is the biggest thing going for an offensive line. It's what Ed Warner has been saying since he was at Ohio State. It's not always the 5 most talented guys. It's the 5 guys that play the best together. And right now we're, you know, Michigan State, I think Rico Beard told me they're on their 6th or 7th offensive line combination because of injuries and the like. So I don't believe there is a personnel advantage. I think Felton Davis, because we'll play a lot of man-to-man, he'll get a couple of big plays, you know, but the way we play pass defense usually is, unless it's, you know, Trace McSorley last year, pretty much under Don Brown, the way it works is you'll get a couple of big plays because we play man-to-man defense, and then you'll go 3 and out most of the rest of the game. That's kind of how it works against us. So Felton Davis will get a couple of his DeAndre Hopkins plays, and then they probably won't get anything else other than that. What I need to see Michigan do, you know, we almost lost a game to Northwestern, in which Northwestern had 205 total yards. We averaged 2.5 yards per play more than they did, and they had the ball at the end of the game and conceivably could have won. Why? Because when we put on the white uniform, Mr. Hyde becomes Dr. Jekyll. That's what happens. They get passive, they get soft, they don't play mentally sound football, and they shoot themselves in the foot consistently. And so, until they get to the point that they're just not going to do that as a program anymore, I don't know why we would expect anything else when that's what we've seen for 12 years.
You were able to do what you did last Saturday night without Rashawn Gary. I believe that he's supposed to be on the field Saturday. Do we know for sure?
We don't. And, I think that's something people keep forgetting is, you look at the defensive performance you saw last week from Michigan, and a guy who could very well be a top 10 pick in next May's NFL draft didn't play a snap. And we are really deep at that spot, really deep. And so I obviously, if you gave me a choice, I'd rather have Rashawn Gary out there, but they've recruited so well on the outside that I don't think it's nearly as big of a loss as, say, Nick Bosa is for Ohio State, because of also the way we play defense. I mean, we scheme up pressure a lot too. So I don't think whether he plays or not will have a factor in the outcome of the game. I really don't. And I think this whole game is played right up here with the guys in the winged helmets. And I just think it comes down to, do they feel like, crap, man, let's not beat ourselves this time and see what happens. I really think it comes down to that.
So yeah, it's been quite a series under Jim Harbaugh. You mentioned the two gaff type wins or losses on the Michigan side, and the one that comes to mind, of course, you alluded to the punt snap was just unfathomable how that could happen, because you not only had to drop the snap but also fling it up in the air. If you fall on the ball, the game's over. But fling the ball up in the air, and Michigan State scores and goes on to college football playoff.
Last week, Mark D'Antonio, I don't know. This is like Devil and Daniel Webster. I made a deal with the pit of hell stuff. Last week against Penn State, they had 4 fumbles and didn't lose any of them. They had 16 passes defensed, and they went on the road and they won the game, Mark, against a team in the top 10. Who the hell does that? Who the hell goes on the road against a team in the top 10, has 4 fumbles, doesn't lose any of them, and has 16 passes defensed, including at the very end of the game where a guy had a pick 6 for Penn State and literally just dropped it. Could have ran, to Harrisburg, and he just dropped the ball. I've never. So I'm just going to sit here, wait to see, what triple deflection interception Patterson throws, bounces off a right tackle, maybe a cheerleader tips it in the air, and, some walk-on safety for Michigan State scoops it up, runs it in. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's a good prop bet for Vegas right there. What is going to be the next way in which Michigan loses to Michigan State? Because as you mentioned, Lewerke was not good in that game until the final drive. He threw 28 incompletions in the game, and they didn't run the ball. Right. And they still put up a bunch of points, and they pulled it out.
Well, they put up enough points. They had 59 yards rushing on their first 24 rushes. And they had 4 fumbles and didn't lose one. And that happens to them all the time. There was a Pro Football Focus had a crazy stat last year. It was not them. It was SB Nation. Had a crazy stat. Do you know which team was number 1 in the country in recovering its own fumbles last year? Can you guess?
Michigan State.
Yeah, come on, man. Yes. Yeah.
I'm bright.
Yeah,
I pick up on these things.
They do this stuff. I mean, they're tough enough to beat, man. But it's just, if you're going to beat them, you don't really beat him either. Like, I don't think Michigan, if they win the game, it's going to be like 24-20. When you beat Michigan State, that's the thing too. If I was a Michigan State fan, I'd love about Mark D'Antonio. Like if you're a Michigan State fan, you're like, here's what I know. If we're going to lose, it's going to be like the Ohio State game last year. We're just outclassed in the first half, and we know it, and we accept it. You know what? We tap the keg, turn the game off, see you next week, right? You know you're not getting crushed like on the last play of the game. You know that. Kirk Cousins completes the Hail Mary at the end. You just know that, right? So if Michigan wins, it's going to be like 31-10. It's going to be like 24-7. There's no way. There is no way that if it's like 24-20 and Michigan State has the ball at the end of the game, and I don't care if they're on the half-yard line and got to go 99 yards, there's no way Michigan is winning that game. If Michigan wins, it's because they walked in and they asserted themselves from the outset, and they were the more talented team. And it looks like a somewhat less dominant version of last week's game because they were on the road.
So, folks, forget my 27-17 Michigan pick. What you want to do, because
no, it could happen. No, that would be about the kind of win. Yeah, like double-digit kind of a win. If
I'm on the fringe there. I guess I'm still good.
Yeah.
This all gives
there's no way Michigan's winning the game if it's within one possession. If Michigan's ball at the end of the game to score, they're not here. What's that?
What Steve is describing for everyone here gives you cause to go follow him on Twitter. At
My
Michigan
Psychosis
Podcast.
Follow me at My Psychosis this week here. That's my Twitter account. Okay.
Because if it is 24-20 with 5 minutes left, then he's going to be fit to be tied.
Yeah, you can follow me then at withdrawal. Yeah. That's what you can do.
Because then it becomes 1-4 against Michigan State and 0-4 against Ohio State.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and then I got to turn Sirius XM off for another week while Barrett Sallee gets his weekly clicks at Jim Harbaugh's expense and becomes unlistenable. That's what happens. So
I don't think it's going to happen.
Enjoying this. You'd never know we won that game last week by talking to me, would you?
No, absolutely not. I expect.
I want your viewers to know I was ecstatic Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But now that we are deeply in the throes of game week, now the bitterness is back. The bile has returned, and I just sort of feel like, it's my annual come get your whooping against Sparty. That's kind of how I feel until they change it. They got to change this, Mark. And I'm not alone. And this is what a lot of the fans are feeling right now, which is we greatly appreciate the progress that Jim has made in the program. It's of where it was when he took over. The incoming recruiting class that he's working on for 2019, it's conceivable we may end up with 3 5-star prospects. We haven't done that at Michigan in one class in 20 years, including that kid there from Columbus who some services think is the #1 recruit in the class. There's a lot of confidence that we're going to nab him, Zach Harris. So, the program's in great shape. But so the meta narrative, the big picture, Michigan fans are ecstatic. But there's these 2 bucket list items in the details that we got to get over these humps, and this is one of them. This rivalry game, and then the next one at the end of the season. Okay, and so I'm on edge right now. I'm on tilt. You want to play poker with me right now, okay? Because you're going to beat me. I'm on tilt right now. Yes.
Well, you did get over the hump in beating that 3-9 Michigan State team. Technically, you're not 0-4. You don't want to be 1-3. You should beat. If you're Michigan, you win 7 out of 10, right?
This is the worst pep talk ever. Thank you.
It is pretty poor out of my part. Absolutely, I can't disagree with that. You got to win 7 out of 10 at least against little brother, right?
See, I hate the little brother stuff.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I hate it. And you know what, Mike Hart, dude dropped a steaming pile on us with that, and we have been doggy bagging that for the last 10 years. And as many yards as he ran for, he didn't beat Ohio State enough to leave us with an annual talking point for Sparty. That mess that Mike Hart has left us to clean up with this rivalry is one of the biggest factors here. And what it did is it didn't just change this rivalry. It gave Michigan State under Mark D'Antonio an identity. That moment gave him a hook. It gave him an identity. And it's been their galvanizing identity as a program, really ever since that time. And it's paid dividends for them. And so what we need to do on Saturday is we need to do what Ohio State did to them last year. We need to do what Alabama did to them in the playoff. Everybody's saying, hey, Michigan's back. All those recruiting classes, the player development, it's all there. It's all lined up. Well, what Michigan needs to do is they need to go, if they get in there in the first quarter and get the lead, they have the superior depth. You give our defense a chance to pin its ears back and go after Lewerke. it can look a lot like what happened last week. But man, if we give them any confidence at all to start the game, here we go again, Whitesnake. That's what happens.
Okay. When I think Michigan State, I hearken back to the days on AstroTurf on both fields, and Sparty usually coming in at give them a tie. We'll throw them a mid-season tie because that was football back then. And my son still sees these NFL games now and says, "Oh yeah, they tied. What happens then?" And I bring up the classic example of the 1991 Michigan team that went 9-0-3, the 92 team.
Yep.
Yes. 9-0-3.
Tied
So
Illinois, tied Ohio State, and tied Notre Dame at the start of the year. Yes.
And talk to him about tie games. But Michigan State, usually, about this time of year, Michigan State, if we're talking circa 1985-90, they come in there like 3-2-1, and Michigan's got 1 or 0 losses, and they're ranked in the top 5 or 10, and Michigan State's nowhere to be found, and it still turns out to be a really good game. Those are the ones I remember.
Yeah,
I remember carrying the ball 35 times.
Yeah, I remember when we used to beat them all the time, but I'm getting older now, and so my memory is getting kind of foggy. That's what I remember.
All right. Well, I think your team's going to help you out with a new, fresh slate starting on Saturday, but I
hope you're right, because we have a bye after that, and I can't even 2 weeks of suffering through Paul Feinbaum and Clay Travis and Barrett Sallee and the SEC media brigades frothing, Cujo-esque frothing at the mouth over the amount of clickbaits they're going to get at Jim Harbaugh and our expense if we lose on Saturday and then have a bye for 2 weeks of that will be dreadful. So we better win.
Well, Steve is a guy who enjoys looking at the lines and trying to beat Vegas, as I know you do. I don't need to tell you. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I've got, stacks of these kind of notebooks with, all sorts of betting lines and my predictions and the whole deal. And anything in this college football season that runs between about a +4 and a +8 or 9 seems to be about a 50-50 game. There have been a ton of those kind of upsets.
Thank you.
That just
again, this is the worst pep talk ever. Thank you.
Steve Deace, Michigan podcast. I miss him coming on. And this is coming off a 25-point win against the Badgers. This is unbelievable.
That was 4 days ago. Now it's 8 weeks. Yes.
You used to have like none of those a year though. 08 to 14.
I know, and I enjoyed it at the time, but now I'm just like, I'm like looking at. I'm looking ahead to that proctology exam, and it's never fun, man. Never fun. Okay.
Oh yes, yeah. Michigan State, they are just a program to marvel at, and I do it from a different perspective. For you, it's exactly that as you described, but for the rest of us, it's. That love Midwestern football, Michigan State and Wisconsin. Those are the programs to look up to admire. Those that make the most out of little and pull together, the 3 stars to build a top 15 program.
Yeah, I guess.
Yes. All right, Steve. We appreciate you stopping by. It's always a fun time. It's a little bit more. There's a little less emotion, a little more intellect in the off season when we can look through history. Yeah. We can look back to yesteryear and analyze the rankings. But man, it's pulling at you right now, boy. You're fighting it.
We have to win this game on Saturday. I can't even if we don't, Mark. I can't even if we don't. We have to win this game on Saturday.
Well, you're the better team.
Our fan base is going to be very cranky if they don't win on Saturday. Very cranky.
And I doubt if there will be much solace in knowing if you do lose that you would win 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose and they win out, I still think they'll be in the Big Ten championship.
No, I mean that if you lose to Michigan State, the reasonable fan, the reasonable analyst would say, well, Michigan would still win 4 out of 5 against Michigan State. That just happened to be the one that you played.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to start winning the one we play.
Yeah,
I'd like to start winning that one.
Yeah, they don't
tell me that's the most important one, and it's a lot of fun when you do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've not experienced it in a while, so I'd kind of like to see what it's like for myself rather than finding out about it secondhand.
Okay. Revenge number 1 came against Wisconsin. Now revenge number 2, back-to-back here.
I hope so.
For the Maize and Blue to set up a huge showdown potentially in Columbus. They could be massive. Circa 2016, massive.
Yep. Let's hope that's how it goes down. I think that'd be great for this region, the conference, and college football. And we don't even have to win Saturday for that to happen. You know, and I we had this 3-game stretch. We got to go 2-1. You know, we got the first one out of the way. If we lose here and then beat Penn State in a couple of weeks, this conversation will sound completely different, and you'll be in a situation where that game in Columbus will be for all the marbles in the Big Ten, which with our schedule heading into the year, that was my number 1 goal, is that we would go into the game in Columbus and have the East Division title on the line in that game, because I actually feel like we match up a lot better with Ohio State. And I think you've seen that play out the last couple of years with Ohio State and more of a spread team, and we have more of a power pro set. And that's kind of reminds me of Jim's matchups with Chip Kelly in Oregon when he was in the Pac-12 at Stanford. And I think we have the quarterback this year that we didn't have the last couple of years. But what Michigan State does is they hit you with an ugly stick, and they just beat you with it for 60 minutes. And if you do anything at all to beat yourself, like Trace McSorley run it out of bounds that run out the clock, you drop a pick 6 at the end of the game that would have won the game. The minute you do anything to beat yourself at all, they Andre Agassi you every single time, like he used to do in his prime. All right. So that's what I'm worried about. We seemingly cannot avoid doing things to beat ourselves wearing white jerseys. And until I see us not do that, I don't know what else to pick. You know, I'm picking with my heart, not with my head, until I see it.
I had Claire Crawford on last hour talking Ohio State, and I had to let her know, Claire, you know that there's a team north of the border that even though from a glossy, glitzy standpoint, your team looks better right now because people look at passing numbers and Dwayne Haskins is tearing up secondaries. They're playing considerably better where it counts.
Yep. So I don't want to suffer through 2 weeks of any more Sparty losses, Mark. So we got to.
One last thing, Steve, the scenario that you just brought up in winning 2 of the 3 to set up the championship match for the East Division in Columbus, though, as you well know, in this college football playoff paranoia mindset, this is all we think about. As soon as you said a second loss, 92% of the people watching are thinking they're done, forget them, because they're not thinking what we're thinking, and that's win the Big Ten championship. Beat
they're
Ohio
100%
State.
wrong. I mean, everybody forgets we went into the last weekend last year with Auburn with 2 losses at number 2. And if they had won the SEC net championship over Georgia, they'd have been in the playoff with 2 losses. Okay, so I don't think the 2-loss thing matters at all. I don't think I think Ohio State was penalized for having 2 losses because Alabama only had 1. I don't even think that was SEC bias. I told you at the time. I thought it was Alabama has earned an amount of street cred. I think if we had the exact same 2 teams and the other team wasn't called Alabama, it was called, say, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Florida even. I don't think they would have gotten in over Ohio State. Similar to if Ohio State in 2014 went head-to-head with Oklahoma and Texas sharing the Big 12 championship instead of Baylor and TCU, I don't think they would have gotten in over one of them. I think brands do matter, okay? And so I don't think 2 losses automatically disqualifies you. We're already heading into a situation where it looks darn near impossible for there to be 2 teams out of the SEC now. I don't, the Big 12 doesn't really have, I don't know what if Oklahoma wins out, what's their signature as a league, they don't really have a lot of good non-conference wins. The Pac-12 is essentially out. I think Oregon will lose on Saturday at Washington State. So, and I say this too about the playoff thing, because I got Michigan fans asking me about this. We haven't won a damn division championship yet. We haven't won the conference title in 15 years. How about we do one of those things and then worry about it, okay? Not to mention we have a mostly new college football playoff committee this year. So we have no idea what things they're going to value compared to the last few years until we see the first ranking. So as Aaron Rodgers once said, relax.
Yes, he does. And then he usually mentions his favorite beverage. He's a big martini. I don't know if it's a martini.
My dog's going to start barking here in a minute, though. My wife just got home with the kids from church, so I want to warn you.
All right. Well, we're good. I'm out of questions. I can listen to you go on about college football and Michigan in particular, especially this subject. You pining for the good old days and wanting to see a signature win against a rival. All right, Steve, we appreciate you stopping by.
Any win, man. I don't care if it's 3-2. Any win. Any win.
3-2.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Take it. All right, Steve. We appreciate it. Steve Deace Michigan Podcast. You got to check him out right there, YouTube and all the audio platforms that you can imagine. And I will stick around to take calls if anyone wants to talk college football. 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687. I'll put it in the chat. I'll hang out for a minute and remind you of what's coming up. Unfortunately, we've had a change in work schedules. Therefore, I will no longer be able to do a Thursday night live stream. So for the most part, the live stream schedule that you see on my banner on YouTube needs to be changed. It is no longer updated. All right, we got a call. When I call for a call, I usually get one. Otherwise, you guys just kind of kick back. All right. So it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? Whoever that was, please call back. Or anyone else who would like to call in. So again, no Thursday night live streams. Going forward, we will have live streams here Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern time, and also throughout the day with instant analysis on Saturday. And then on SG1 Sports, our friends over there have asked us to host live streams on Friday. So Friday at noon Eastern time at SG1 Sports, and also Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, wrapping up the weekend on SG1 Sports. I've got a preview and prediction of Michigan State on SG1 Sports, as well as Ohio State and Purdue. Washington State and Oregon's coming up. Again, you can catch those on SG1 Sports. And I have to finish out my college football playoff scenarios. I have knocked out the ACC, the SEC, and the Big Ten. I will look at the Big 12 and the Pac-12. Believe it or not, even though our friends in the Pac-12 are basically on life support at this point, I will do a Pac-12 breakdown. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Okay, DeAndre, you hang on 2 seconds. You're not on speaker for some reason. Shoot. See if I can get you on speakerphone. Shoot. I'm not able to get you on speaker. I don't know why. It's not coming up. There we go. All right, DeAndre, what's going on, man?
How you doing? Is it true Nick Bosa is going to sit out the rest of the year, or the Bosa? I don't know which one Bosa is, but the Bosa, the defensive end for Ohio State, is he going to sit out the rest of the year?
Yes, it would be Nick. Joey was the first, so it's Nick Bosa, and he is withdrawn from school.
Wow. You saw it coming after a couple of those injuries that you saw. Who was the guy with Notre Dame, the linebacker? And I don't blame him. I mean, he had to think about his future.
You're talking about Jalen Smith.
Yeah, Jalen Smith. That's what happened with the Notre Dame. Play with the Cowboys, I believe now.
Yes,
and that's even worse than getting hurt. But yeah, I was sad to see. I was sad to hear that. There was another Ohio State player that got hurt too. Played middle linebacker in a Fiesta Bowl where he tore his leg up. I think he plays for Jacksonville right now. I can't remember his name. But yeah,
linebacker who played in the Fiesta Bowl that plays for Ohio State. Are you talking about Darren Lee? You just talking about in the last couple of years?
I thought it was. I might be mistaken. Cause I think Ohio State and Notre Dame played in like the Fiesta Bowl or something.
Yeah, 2 years ago they did. Yep.
Okay, so that might not have been Ohio State player. But like I said, I'm just sad to see Bosa go, but all he had to do was best for him.
Well, I would like to see all the teams at full strength, but football is a physical game, and therefore, at this point in the season, most of the teams are banged up. You just don't want to see them. The teams that suffer from the injuries are typically the ones that suffer where their big stars are lost, and they can't afford to lose them. Now, we'll see if Ohio State is able to weather this issue, or you know how some teams get beat up all in one position, and that really changes their approach and changes what they're able to do.
I got one good question for
Sure.
you. Is Alonzo and your other Miami contributors, are they okay after the Virginia loss?
Are they okay? Well, I asked all of them to come on tonight, and I've not gotten, I won't say I didn't get a response. Alonzo did a live stream tonight, so he wasn't able to come on. Cam is under the weather. I don't know if that's directly linked to the game that Cam is under the weather, but we appreciate our Miami guests, but none of them able to come on tonight. Yeah, that one stung, I'm sure, against a pretty marginal Virginia team.
Right. Well, I ain't gonna hold you up too long tonight, Mark. I just want to give you a call and make sure that I was hearing the news right. I wish Bosa the best. You know, he's a great player, but I hope this is not a trend that we're going to see in college football where the best players say, hey, we ain't going to play for the full year. I'm kind of sad of it, but, I mean, you got to do what you got to do for business. I love college football more than I love pro football because I'm a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and that's why the only team I really care about watching. And
DeAndre, I think we have to consider. I think we also have to consider the timing of the injury. So he played 3 games. He got hurt against TCU, so he was scheduled to come back against Michigan. That was the very last game of the season. So for him to come back, and maybe his diagnosis was pushed back a little bit. So for him to come back for a bowl game or the college football playoff and risk injury when that's all the time that he would play, and considering he's going to be a top pick anyway, he's really not playing for much besides playing for the team. He's not playing for himself at that point. So I kind of have to understand the decision.
Well, Mark, you have a great night, man. Little Miami fans is going to be okay about 2 or 3 years. They'll be all right.
2 or 3 years. They might ring up another 10 or 12 losses by then. All right, DeAndre, we appreciate it.
All right, yeah, great night.
Our guy DeAndre, big Clemson fan, follows the ACC in particular, college football across the board, and always love hearing from him. Got Buckeye State Sports on the sports chat, along with Ricky and William Lee. Emmanuel, we appreciate it. Emmanuel has reminded everyone that they need to like the videos. So I'm guessing that once I post this video, it's going to have about 200 to 300 views. And I'm going to have like 15 or 20 likes. So all we do is ask that you like the video, and keep in mind that the live chat is exceptional, and we enjoyed the live chat and hope that you do too. It's there for you guys to talk it up, but also comment to the videos, because that helps out the station, the channel as well. And of course, if you do any Amazon shopping, you know what to do. You or anyone in your household does the shopping on Amazon, just grab one of the links in the description section. You don't need to purchase the product. Just go into Amazon using one of the links that I provide in all the description sections of the videos. Use that link to enter the Amazon website, and that supports the channel as well. All right, I think we can wrap it up for a Wednesday night. Again, unfortunately, won't be back on Thursday. We'll see about Friday. I'll definitely have a live stream on Friday over at SG1 Sports at noon Eastern time, so please join us there. I think I'm going to post a schedule to let you guys know where I'm going to be for the rest of the week. I'll do that as well as post betting lines for week 8, our conversation with Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info. I've got a Washington State, Oregon video preview coming up, as well as college football playoff scenarios for the Big 12 and the Pac-12, and also conference rankings. I got to knock those out as well right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We will see you guys soon. And remember, if I've got anybody on the line who has not subscribed to our newsletter, I believe if you talk to anyone on the chat who has signed up for the newsletter, they will vouch for our newsletter that gets released each and every Monday. So just send your email to MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Your email to mine, MarkRogersTV at Gmail, will get you signed up for the newsletter that's released each and every Monday with my perspective, my take on the weekend in college football, including a channel update, and also the ever popular stats, trends, and facts for that particular weekend in college football. I am going to get off here, and before I forget, I'm going to jump online. I'm going to order helmets. I will do that right now. Why not? All right, guys, we appreciate you stopping by. 288028. If you are still on the line, I see you signing off there. Recognize that you wanted college football playoff. No, you wanted conference rankings, and they are coming. Conference rankings are coming. 288028. And I also included this week, as you can see, college football playoff scenarios for all 5 power conferences right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please tell your family and friends we're around. We'll see you next time.